Welcome. Tonight, we begin a different kind of journey. Not a flight, not a dream, but a fall. A fall through time, to a land of hot winds, silent gods, and sand that never forgets. Take a breath. Let your shoulders relax and imagine you open your eyes and you're no longer in this century. You think you're tough, right? Could survive anything: city stress, gym pain, online trolls. But what if we dropped you into ancient Egypt? No AC, no mattress, no morning latte. Just a straw bed, a muddy floor, and the sun unforgiving. Today, you wake up as a common worker on the banks of the Nile. You're expected to haul stones, build monuments, obey blindly. No rights, no rest, no pause. Welcome to your new life 3,000 years ago. Will you survive the next 24 hours? Or will the desert break you before lunch? You wake up, but this isn't your bed. There's no soft mattress, no hum of air conditioning, no phone buzzing on the nightstand, no curtain gently fluttering in filtered morning light. Instead, there's dust, a rough straw mat beneath your back, and the thick, earthy scent of mud brick walls. You squint. A narrow ray of sunlight pushes through a small slit in the wall, the only window. It lands gently on a jug made of clay, resting beside woven reed baskets. Outside, a rooster crows. A goat stomps its hooves on the packed earth. The sounds of early life in a world untouched by electricity. You sit up. Your muscles ache, not from yesterday's workout, but from sleeping on straw and dirt. There's no mirror to check your reflection, just the flickering light of a waking world and the slow, heavy air of the desert. This isn't your apartment. It's not even your century. You've woken up in ancient Egypt, sometime around 1200 BCE, a time when the pharaohs reigned and comfort was a distant dream. So, breathe deeply, because your first day is just beginning. You hear it before you see it. The soft crackle of a fire being lit. The uneven footsteps of someone walking barefoot across packed earth. A faint splash of water being poured into a clay bowl. Life here begins without alarm clocks. No news, no weather reports, just instinct and ritual. Somewhere nearby, a child giggles and runs by, carrying a jug that's too big for their arms. The handle thumps against their elbow as dust rises from the ground. A cow snorts, a donkey brays in the distance. Birds circle lazily overhead.
You rise slowly. The room is quiet, yet full of presence, of age, of quiet breath. The air is dry, but not lifeless. It hums with stories. The walls are cracked but strong. A woven curtain hangs across a doorway. There are no light switches here, only the desert sun. No sink, no toothbrush. You splash water from a clay pot onto your face. It's cool, surprising. And suddenly, you're more awake than you wanted to be. You glance toward the horizon. Somewhere beyond this morning lies a long day of labor. But for now, for this small moment, the stillness is sacred.
Your stomach grumbles quietly, but persistently. You walk outside, drawn by the smell of smoke and barley. A woman crouches near a clay oven, shaping coarse dough with her hands. It's flat, dense, darker than any bread you know. It's called tal, and it's what most Egyptians ate. She flips it over a hot stone, and the scent is earthy, almost smoky. There's no butter, no jam, just grain, fire, and hands worn by time. Beside her, a jug of beer, not like the beer you know. It's cloudy, sour, made from bread soaked in water and left to ferment. You're handed a piece of bread and a cup of the brew. It's warm, heavy, and tastes like survival. No eggs, no fruit bowl, no sweet pastries. Breakfast here is fuel, nothing more. You chew slowly. The bread is rough. It sticks to your teeth. The beer is warm, slightly bitter, but it fills your stomach just enough. You glance around. Children eat in silence, already dusty from morning chores. A man sharpens a tool. A goat nudges its nose into a sack of grain. This isn't leisure. No one is chatting about dreams or plans. There are no to-go cups, no scrolling, no soft cafe music. This is routine, survival shaped into habit. You drink the last of the sour beer, feeling it settle low in your belly. It's not refreshing, but it works. Soon, someone calls out. Your name? Maybe not. But your duty, your role, whatever it is, it's waiting. You rise slowly, and the day begins, not with caffeine, but with quiet resignation. The sun doesn't rise here. It erupts. There's no gentle transition from night to day, no lingering twilight. One moment, the sky is muted blue. The next, it's blazing gold. You step outside. The air already carries heat, the kind that doesn't just touch your skin, it enters it. Dust clings to your feet. You squint as light floods everything, even the shadows. You walk toward the site. Not a job site in the modern sense. No helmets, no vests, no brakes. Just people. Dozens of them. some barefoot, some with linen cloth wrapped tight around their heads, all moving in the same rhythm, silent, measured, reluctantly practiced. The morning shift has begun. You pass by a long wooden sled groaning under the weight of limestone blocks. Two men lean forward, pulling in unison. Their arms tremble. One slips. He doesn't curse. He just gets up, slowly, automatically. There's no talking. There's no time for talking. Only breath and effort. You reach your station, a thick rope looped through a harness. Your job is to pull and pull again. No explanation, no complaint, no escape. And so you lean forward. Your heels dig into the sand. Your shoulders scream even before the rock moves. And it does move, slightly, reluctantly. You feel it in your spine. This stone is heavier than your pride, and the desert never negotiates. By mid-morning, your shirt is soaked. The linen sticks to your body, rubbing against your skin with every breath. Your hands, once soft, now sting with blisters. You try to grip the rope differently, but it's always rough, always unforgiving. The man next to you collapses. He isn't helped. No one is cruel, no one is kind. They simply keep working. That's how it is here. Compassion is quiet. Survival is louder. You try not to look at the overseer. He stands nearby, under a shaded cloth, watching. He carries a staff carved with symbols, not decoration, but discipline. There are no breaks unless someone says so, and no one ever says so. You continue. The heat presses on your back like a second weight. Your legs are sore. Your thoughts are dull. You don't think about how long. You only think about one more pull. Around you, the desert sings, a dry, endless hum. There are no birds now, no breeze, only your breath and the knowledge. This shift won't end with a whistle. It ends when the sun decides it's time. As you rest, briefly, in the shadow of the scaffolding, you begin to notice. There are two Egypts. One far above, golden, elevated, divine. And another, the one you live in, heavy, dirty, replaceable. In the first Egypt, people wear fine linen robes. Their skin is perfumed. Their sandals are clean. They ride litters, shaded by palm frond fans carried by servants. These are the scribes, the priests, the overseers, and at the very top, the Pharaoh, a living god. His words become law, his image carved into stone, his face painted brighter than the sun. He never pulls rope, he never carries stone. In his world, time is ceremonial, not measured by labor, but by festivals, offerings, and processionals. He does not feel the heat like you do.
He does not bleed like you do. And yet, it is your hands, your body, your breath that builds the monuments he will be buried in. That is the unspoken truth here. The greatness of Egypt rests on backs like yours.
There are rules, yes, but they aren't yours to write. Laws exist to protect order, not fairness. If a scribe strikes you, no one blinks. But if you speak back, it's insubordination, punishable by lashes or worse. Justice flows upward, rarely downward. Disputes are settled in whispers and favors, not in courts. You've heard stories of workers who fell ill and were replaced within hours, of mothers who begged for grain and were beaten for disruption, of accidents that no one reports because no one is listening. You don't have a voice. You don't have a name that matters. You are function, muscle, a shadow in the sun. And yet, you are necessary. That is your paradox. Without you, the stones don't move. Without you, temples stay unfinished. Without you, even the pharaoh would lie beneath sand, not stone. But no statue will bear your name. No scroll will tell your story. Only silence and maybe the wind. And so you keep going, not for glory, but because this is how the day moves, one pull at a time. While you lift stones under the unforgiving sun, others begin their morning very differently. In the heart of Thebes, or along the calm waters of the Nile, there are homes not made of mud, but carved from fine limestone. Tall columns, painted ceilings, and walls etched with stories of gods. The first light filters through sheer linen curtains as servants gently roll open wooden shutters. Cool air flows across polished floors. Perfumed oils already burn in bronze dishes. The scent? Lotus, myrrh, and power. A noblewoman stretches in bed. Her sheets are soft, freshly woven. A handmaid massages her temples with scented oils. Another braids her hair into elegant coils. Slow, careful, ceremonial. There is no urgency. Time here moves like silk. No alarms, no shouting, just flute music echoing in the courtyard, and the rhythmic splash of bath water being poured into painted basins. She will spend the morning not hauling anything, but choosing. Which necklace best fits the day? Which sandals match the shade of her eyeliner? Which servant will tell the juiciest gossip from the palace halls? In this Egypt, life is not about survival. It's about refinement, about beauty, about controlling the story others will remember long after your body returns to dust. When the sun is highest and you are your most exhausted, the nobleman wakes from his midday nap. He hasn't worked, but he's hungry, and so a table is set. Fresh figs, roasted goose glazed with honey, pomegranate wine served chilled in alabaster cups, flatbread still warm from the oven, but finer than what you eat, softer, whiter, almost sweet. There are no flies here. Someone is always waving a fan. Someone is always filling a cup. A scribe reads aloud the latest papyrus scroll. A musician plucks a harp, adding notes to the silence. A dancer sways slowly, eyes lowered, trained to move like smoke. And the nobleman? He doesn't lift a finger. He gestures, he nods, he chooses, and others obey. His world is made of decisions, not duties. Where to hunt, which offering to dedicate to the gods, who will arrange his next ceremony. He speaks softly, but everything listens, because in this Egypt, power doesn't shout, it whispers, and the whisper still echoes through stone temples you helped build, even if your name is nowhere carved. To live in ancient Egypt was never to live for yourself. Every breath, every task, every movement was part of something larger, a pattern, a story older than memory. From the moment you were born, you belonged to the Ma'at, the great balance that held the world together. Ma'at wasn't just a goddess. She was truth, order, harmony. She was why the sun rose, why the Nile flooded, why the seasons turned. And your job, no matter how small, was to protect that balance, to follow the rituals, to honor the gods, to not disturb the cosmic rhythm, even when life was hard. You weren't just building a wall. You were helping Ra journey across the sky. You weren't just planting grain. You were feeding the balance of heaven and earth. There were no small people in this vision, only small understandings. The Pharaoh ruled because he kept this balance. The priests guided because they heard the divine pulse. And you obeyed because you believed that even the quietest act, done with care, could echo across eternity. In the West, we fear death. We avoid it, whisper about it. But in ancient Egypt, death was never the end. It was a doorway, a continuation. They believed your soul had many parts, each with its own journey, its own trials. When you died, your heart was weighed, not by doctors, but by the gods. It was placed on a scale, balanced against a feather, the symbol of Ma'at. If your heart was light, you passed. If not, it was devoured, erased. But to live with a light heart, that required alignment, a life lived in tune with truth, in service, in silence, in sacrifice. That's why tombs were filled with prayers, why names were etched into walls, why the dead were buried with food, tools, even poems, because memory was power, and being remembered meant staying alive in the afterlife. To the Egyptians, death was not something to fear. It was something to prepare for. And so every day you toiled, you also rehearsed, not for applause, but for judgment. You shaped your life like a sculpture, hoping that when the final breath came, you would be worthy of stepping into the field of reeds, a paradise beyond suffering, where all was balanced again. The Nile gives life, but it can also take it. Its waters look peaceful, reflective, generous, but in them swims danger, invisible and patient. You fill a jar at the riverbank. It's murky, brown-green. You squint, you see nothing, but the danger is already in the jar. Parasites, microscopic eggs, invisible killers. They enter through water poured over your skin, through a splash into your eye, through a sip when you're too thirsty to wait. Days later, your stomach twists, your skin itches, your urine turns red, and no one knows why. The priests say it's a curse, or bad air, or the anger of a forgotten god. But it isn't. It's the water, and no one can clean it. There are no filters, no medicine, no lab tests or sterile gloves, only rituals, prayers, and hope. And so, every sip is a gamble, every wash a risk. Even water, the giver of life, becomes a silent thief. You cut your hand. It's small, a splinter from a tool. You barely notice, but the cut doesn't heal. The edge turns red, then puffy, then hot. By the third day, it throbs with every heartbeat. There are no antibiotics, no stitches, no antiseptic rinse. A priest chants over it, burns herbs, draws symbols on your arm. You believe because belief is the only comfort you have. But the fever comes anyway. You grow cold, then hot. Your breath quickens, your limbs ache. Someone whispers you've been touched by the underworld. Someone else says it's just fate. But deep down, you know, it was just a splinter, just one careless moment. And now the gods are silent, and your name might never be spoken again. Because here, in this beautiful sun-drenched world, death does not roar. It whispers and waits. In many ancient cultures, women were shadows, seen but not heard, decorations in stories told by men. But in ancient Egypt, a woman had more than a name. She had property, voice, presence. She could own land, run businesses, write wills, file for divorce. Her signature held legal weight. Her voice could be heard in court. She was not equal to a man, no, but she was not invisible. And in her home, she was often the center. She wove linen, pressed oil from lotus, managed stores of grain, balanced accounts in numbers and in relationships. She chose when to wed, when to bear children,
And if her husband failed to provide, she could leave and take her dowry with her. Some women became priestesses, others scribes, some even advisors to the throne. And yet, she still bore the weight of expectation, to be gentle, obedient, graceful, to speak softly, to carry strength silently, to keep the household in harmony, and if the household cracked, to be the one blamed for the fracture. She walked beside men in statues, but rarely ahead, and rarely named first. She mattered, but quietly.
A child in ancient Egypt was never just a child. There were no playgrounds, no school buses, no cartoons on clay tablets. A child learned by watching, by doing, by failing and trying again, under the sun, in the dirt, with tools too big for their hands. By age 5, a child might already herd goats, or carry grain, or sweep temple floors. Boys were expected to become men, not later, soon. Girls to become wives, not after dreams, after puberty. Some boys, the lucky few, went to school. They learned to read hieroglyphs, copy scriptures, recite prayers, become scribes, priests, maybe more. Most didn't. They learned math by measuring wheat, geography by carrying baskets to the Nile, discipline by watching others get whipped. There were lullabies, there was laughter, but there was no childhood as you know it. Every mistake was seen, every success was expected, every path was drawn before you could choose it. And yet, children smiled, ran through courtyards, carved toys from wood, made up songs, loved and lost and wondered, just like children always have. They grew up fast, but not empty, because even in the dust, they dreamed. The sun finally gives in. It sinks low behind the horizon, casting long golden shadows across the desert. For a moment, the sand glows like copper. Then, darkness slides in. In the village, work tools are put away. Sacks of grain are tied. Doors, made of reeds and rope, are pulled shut. You step inside your home, a small, square space with mud brick walls. The air is cooler now, but still smells of dust and heat. Someone lights an oil lamp. The flame flickers, low, steady, golden. There is no electricity, no buzzing bulbs, just the soft, living glow of flame and silence. Dinner is simple: flatbread, dried fish, lentils, served in clay bowls with fingers on the floor. No silverware, no tablecloths, only presence. A few quiet words are shared, a sigh, a yawn, and then the quiet deepens. Outside, insects begin their songs. The wind picks up across the dunes. Palm trees sway. The Nile, somewhere not far, murmurs in its sleep. The world shrinks. No screens, no scrolling, just you, a mat,
a blanket, and the sound of ancient night.
You lie down, not on a mattress, but a mat made of reeds woven by hand. It creaks beneath you, uneven but familiar. The ceiling above is not painted, just clay, cracked in places. Sometimes you stare at the cracks like constellations. There are no lullabies from speakers, only the hum of insects, the occasional bray of a donkey, a baby crying in a nearby home, and the distant hiss of wind brushing against stone. You close your eyes. Your body is tired, deeper than muscle. It's a kind of weariness that belongs to sand, to age, to time itself. But the mind, it wanders to the temple downriver, to the face of the statue of Ra, to dreams of floating boats, of afterlives, of fields of reeds where no one works, only rests. You don't fear death tonight, not here, not under this sky. Because above you is the same sky your ancestors prayed under, the same stars the pharaohs watched, the same moon that bathed the pyramids in silver. You are not rich, not remembered, not carved into history. But for now, you are held by earth, by night, by something ancient that doesn't need a name. And sleep comes, quiet, unhurried, like a priestess with bare feet crossing a sacred hall. In ancient Egypt, sleep wasn't just rest. It was a doorway, a passage into the sacred. People believed dreams were not random. They were messages, visions, a place where gods whispered in symbols. To dream of water meant renewal, of a falcon, protection, of a snake, danger, or healing. It all depended on how you felt when you woke up. Dreams were studied, interpreted. Some temples even had dream chambers, quiet, perfumed rooms where believers would lie down and wait for a divine dream. Even ordinary people, farmers, laborers, bakers, held on to this belief that in sleep you could leave the dust of the earth and rise into the sky of the gods. You, lying on your mat tonight, may have worked all day in silence, but in your dream, you might speak with Thoth, the god of wisdom. You might fly with Horus. You might meet a loved one long gone. No dream was foolish, no hope too small, because the night was the only place where everyone was equal, where even a slave could be chosen, even a child could be called, even a no-name could be heard. You think they had no dreams because their lives were so full of labor, because they had no time, no books, no schools. But that's not true. They dreamed of full granaries, of laughter at evening fires, of children who survived winter, of gods who knew their names. They dreamed of being remembered, not as kings, but as good people, people who worked, who cared, who tried. On tomb walls, not all prayers were grand. Some were simple. May my daughter marry in peace. May my name be spoken at festivals. May my heart be light. These were not warriors, not pharaohs, just people. And yet, their dreams were preserved in ink, in limestone, in song. Because in ancient Egypt, hope was a kind of holiness. To want better was sacred. To imagine beauty while sleeping on clay was not delusion. It was devotion. So, you made it through the day. One full day in ancient Egypt. From sunrise to starlight. From sweat to silence. You pulled stone. You swallowed dust. You drank bitter beer and lay on a straw mat. You worked in the sun. You listened in the dark. You dreamed in a room with no roof. You weren't honored. You weren't praised. No statue bears your name. No poem tells your story. And yet, you lived. You stood in line at the river. You washed your hands before bread. You carried more than stone. You carried meaning. You were necessary. Not powerful, but present. Not remembered, but real. Now ask yourself, could you do it again? Could you live not for glory, but for rhythm? Not for ambition, but for balance? Could you find dignity in dust, strength in silence, grace in repetition? Because that was Egypt. Not just gods and gold, but people like you, breathing, sweating, hoping, and sleeping under stars they couldn't name, but trusted anyway. So tonight, as your own world falls quiet, close your eyes. And remember, you were there. You walked in sand. You held the rope. You became part of the story. And now you sleep, not in the past, not in the present, but somewhere in between.